Hi, my name is Scott McGuire, and today I'll be introducing you to Active Directory. It should be a basic information. You shouldn't be able to install it or build a server from your way up, but if it's installed on a server, you should already kind of know how it works, and hopefully by the end make a user and put them in groups. So that's my goals. So let's get started. First, about Active Directory. What is it? It is a backbone of the domain controller. The domain controller is the server itself, which will manage, maintain, and store all the information for the Active Directory. The Active Directory is merely a accumulation of services and roles. I'll be talking about 5 of the services later that compose it. The most important parts of the Active Directory and its roles boil down to 3 A's: authentication, authorization, and accountability. Authorization is what you use when you need to log into your computer. Who here has a computer at home? Can anybody log into it? No. That's because you have a user account that you made with your password on your computer, correct?
Yes.
Alright. Well, with Active Directory, it centralizes that login and basically acts as kind of a phone book for people to access it. Let's just say that you're working at a school and you get a basic login information. It allows you to, let's say you want to go to the library and you want to go onto one of the library's computers. You don't have to go to that same computer every time you need to access that resource. It allows you to be more free, allowed to access it from many different places, which is super essential whenever you're working in a company, especially a large one. The last part is accountability. Accountability is super important because it allows you to kind of track how users and files are accessed and what they're accessing. Just to say that you have a file that goes missing abruptly. Well, accountability part where it logs in all the information, super important to trying to track down that. You use logs in order to try to basically be the detective of the company. How will users interact with it? Largely, they won't. When they do, they probably won't notice it. Because whenever they log into something, most of the time they don't even have to put in the domain because it'll already be cached. So most of the time they'll just put in their username and their password and they get in. And that's fantastic because it allows users not to have to navigate like the dangerous waters of authentication. I like to say pay no attention to the man behind the curtain because they won't. Alright. How will you as an IT professional administrating a server interact with it? It allows you to create and maintain users, and also groups, amongst other things I'll discuss later. It allows you to change and reset passwords and changing permissions. There's other things you can do with Active Directory, but these are the most common things that you'll run into. I would say that out of 90% of the time that I interact with Active Directory, it's one of those 3 things. Alright, so now we're getting down to how Active Directory organizes itself. First, there are the forests, which is the largest organization object. It is a collection of domains. And a domain is as simple as facebook.com. That's a domain. When you go to it, you go into that domain. There can be subdomains to that. So there's asia.facebook.com. Let's just say that you have multiple continents that your company works on. You can have asia.facebook.com, europe.facebook.com. Now let's say that you have mail servers that you only want those destinations to reach. You can do mail.europe.facebook.com. So it allows you to do a great deal of organization, and that's really all the Active Directory really comes down to. Next we'll go to domains, which are collections of resources. Resources being users, computers, websites, and servers. You register computers to domains. When they were registered, then they can access the Active Directory and then basically pull up your username and password and use that to get you into the resources. Then we go down to organizational units. Organizational units are much like the folders that you use and love in your regular computer when you open up Windows Explorer. So when you're trying to save a file and you want it to be under programs or under desktop, it's essentially kind of like that. As you can kind of see from these pictures here, they open up into other organizational units for more precise organization. Let's just say that you, yet again, have multiple different domains underneath one domain. You can even organize these by destination. So you can say, well, people within the Illinois area are underneath the Illinois organizational unit. So that's really helpful whenever you're trying to find a user or set people to groups and stuff like that. It allows you to do item level targeting with other parts of Windows Server. So that's a little bit beyond what we're going to go into today, but that's why it's important. Okay, so the 5 services that go into Active Directory that really make it up are the Active Active Directory domain services, which do the authentication and authorization service. Is essentially the phone book of your company. So whenever somebody goes, I am S. McGuire, and here is my password, they will look it up, and will make sure that the passwords match. If they're matched, they are allowed in. And then the authorization service basically goes, okay, well, they're allowed to get these things, they're allowed to have access to these resources. AD lightweight directory services are basically, it's basically like the service right before it, except for the light version. And it's only dealing with directory services. It's not dealing with authorization. So let's just say that you don't really have a need for much authorization. This is where this is probably the service that's going to be used the most, where it's basically just doing the phone book.
So it's primarily just the organizational tool rather than the.
It's like it's the authentication, like looking you up and allowing you in type tool. The federation services is kind of interesting because this starts to get a bit more complicated. It allows for single sign-on for web-based services between organizations. So let's just say that you are Facebook and you want to have your employees access different resources on a different company completely. Let's just say that you have a third-party vendor that needs access to certain resources, or you need access to their resources. This is really important because it allows for this to happen without the user necessarily knowing about it. Because it can use that single sign-on that you use at the beginning when you logged on, and it'll assign a token to you that goes, hey, this person can access these resources. And this is really only for between different organizations. It's also kind of important for whenever you have people from the outside accessing you. Either way, this is a more advanced type service. The Active Directory certificate service is a digital certification, enrollment, and revocation services. That sounds really complicated. All the service does is hand out certificates. Basically going, this person, this site is certified to go onto because it's safe, hey, we vouch for it, stuff like that. So like whenever you go to a web page and it goes, hey, the certificate's not safe, it does that little warning to you, would you like to proceed? This is essentially what it's interacting with. So then we get to Active Directory rights management services, which is essentially the bodyguard for your files. When I was talking about the permissions before, this is really what actively does that. So let's just say that you create a file and you go, well, I only want this person to be able to read it. What it does is it goes, okay, well, it hands it was essentially a digital form that goes, okay, with this file, only these users can do this, otherwise, only this. So no matter where you pass that file onto, it will have that right and have that only that authorization. So that's really important whenever you're, yet again, handing out files to a large amount of people that need access. It only takes one person to mess up a document forever until that's why we have file restores. Today, even I did 2 file restores, huge folder restores, because one person accidentally hit delete 2 weeks ago. So that type of stuff is kind of important when it comes to this, when it comes to files. Next, permissions. Resources can be shared or not. I've been talking about this pretty much the entire thing. This is such a huge part of Active Directory. It allows you to change NTFS permissions. NTFS may seem scary. All it means is New Technology File System. It's new technology because in around 2004, Windows came out with NTFS, while before they were using FAT, which is File Access Technology. There's not much more I can go into it without going really deep into it, but it's essentially how your computer organizes and accesses files. It's essentially a database from which when you go, hey, I'll bring up that Word document, it goes, okay, well, I'm looking for that Word document. Where is it stored on the hard drive? It's stored here. Let's retrieve it. So that's what that does. This allows you to do that on an enterprise level. So you're allowed to go, okay, hey, this file right here can be accessed by these people. It goes, all right, I will take that, I will store it, and I'll make sure that whenever anybody tries to retrieve this, I will check against it. All right, so now we get to put the whole thing together. So this next part is going to be me taking a simple request, and putting it into one of my test labs. So here we can see my email. It's from Scott McGuire to Scott McGuire. He's a popular guy. We would like you to create a new user. Specifics will be below. He's a new user to the Barrington site and will need access to the shared drives. The user is Nick Cage, so pretty popular guy. I just went through and let me go ahead and push this back here. So you can see that his name is Nick Cage. His username is InCage. Most of the time, either they will use a first initial last name, or something like that. So, for example, whenever I went to school, my username was S. McGuire. That's usually the standard. I've also seen it done the opposite way, where it's the first name and then the last initial, the first initial of the last name. Most of the time, they'll give you a password. I just did it this time because it makes it a little bit more simple and will allow me to kind of show you what I'm doing. And then also I put in groups. So this is kind of the area where you can assign permissions to groups. So let's just say that it makes it a little bit easier than having to necessarily add individual users to a specific file or something like that. So let's just say you make a whole new file. You don't have to necessarily add in like all 50 people that you want to access that file separately. It allows you to do it as a group. Yes?
So the question is that when you receive these emails from like a client or whatever, are they always going to be able to specify what group they want the new user to be in, or is it dependent on the company, or?
My experience tends to be that they will go, hey, we need a new user, he's going to be in this department, here's another user who is much like his permissions. So what we'll do is we'll go through, we'll check that, well actually, later in the thing, I'll show you where you can check the groups that users are in, and you go in, you check that, and then you can just add them straight to it. It's pretty neat. That's how I get most of my requests, but sometimes you do need to ask follow-up questions. Part of the IT job is getting information. Your information technology, you need to get the information, you need to understand what you need to make, you need to get it. Alright, so they can go, okay, so we're going to move on. Let me stumble through here. So I'm accessing Active Directory. There's many different ways you can do this. I'm going to start typing, as you can see here, and it brings it right up, Active Directory. I click on that, it brings this up, which this is Active Directory itself. So as you can see, these are the organizational units. I have gone through and organized everything under my own, this test Scott McGuire production. And then I can put in computers, groups, servers, service accounts, and users. Service accounts tend to be accounts that aren't accessed by regular users, but are accessed by specific programs that need them to run. So now I went through and I selected users, and then I opened that up, that organizational up, to 3 more organizational units, California, Florida, Illinois. Since Barrington is in Illinois, you will see me add it to the Illinois. So there's multiple ways that you can go about creating a new user. One of those being right-clicking. It's not really hard. They make this really easy. But then, as you also saw, there's a small button at the top with the user symbol on it, which is this. And you just merely click on that, and it'll bring this screen up. This is where you fill in the information for said user. Like I said, there's the first name. You'll see me go ahead and type that in here. And then I'll go ahead and type in the last name. You can notice that as I type it in, the full name automatically fills itself. Pretty convenient, pretty easy. This is also where you put in the username, so InCage. Next. Now, I'm going to decide that he doesn't need to change his password at next logon, and then I'm going to type in his password. You're going to see me try to copy and paste it, you can't copy and paste to that because passwords are the essential part of your security. So having copy and paste rules, not that good. So I'm going to go ahead and clumsily type all this in here slowly. Does anybody have any other questions, Carl? Oh, yes.
I was gonna ask, this whole thing is done on Windows, but I was wondering if there's a similar process for Mac.
You're not going to see that really with Mac. Mac was looking like it was going to enter into the enterprise game, but Tim Cook has decided to take it more towards personal use. So you're going to see more of these coming out than you're going to see enterprise. My boss argues that we're going to see Mac come into the office. I would say no.
That's interesting.
Yes.
On that note, all this really reminds me of like sharing a file in Google Drive. Is that like an access directory? Or like,
It probably uses a lot of similar protocols and systems, but ultimately, it's not going to have all the backlog of like, logging in as a user, stuff like that. It's probably going to have other things managing that.
oh,
I don't know necessarily how that Google Drive works, essentially, but ultimately, the share permission and how you can share it with specific people, and you can be like, oh, only they can write it, only they can read it, is extremely similar.
yeah. Okay.
I think I saw one more hand now. All right, we'll go on from here. All right, and then that's it. That's all it takes to make a user. So you can see, I'm going to go through and start demonstrating how to add it to a group. Right-clicking, add it to group, type in the group that you want. You don't even have to put in the whole name, which is why I really like searching through this. You can just put in mapped, because right now I'm looking for allowed map group, map drive group. So I can see it brought up both of those groups since I just put in mapped, and then there's two here. Map drive, not allowed, map drive, allowed. So I'm going to go ahead and add them to the allowed group. Hit OK. Hit OK again. Now he's in that group. He has all permissions that group has now. That's pretty easy. So now I'm going to go through and kind of show you the properties of groups and stuff like that. Making a group is pretty much just as simple as making a user. Most of the same steps except for no password, no username, stuff like that. You make the user and then you will add him to the permissions that you need him to be on. You can see here that I'm demonstrating that you can see the user within the group now. Everything is cross-referenceable. So like let's just say that you can, I'm now going to go to the user again and show you the very basics of what's inside of user properties. I'm also going to show you how to reset a password. Resetting a password, right click on it, reset password, you type it in, it goes through, it works. It's all very simple stuff. So now, when you open up a property, you get all these tabs, and that may seem very confusing. But as 90% of my job, whenever I interact with the user, is going to be within General, Account, and Member of tabs. These are the most important because the General one will give you the basic information on the person. You can put in a lot of information there. Not all of it will be interacting with Active Directory, but it's there. The Account. The Account gives you the ability to change the logon name, which is to say that I don't like S. McGuire. Which is to say that there's somebody else is like, well, I want that name. Well, then you can go in here and change it to like S. McGuire 2 or Scott McGuire. And then you can also set up the account options. They're there. This is also where you would, let's just say that somebody tries to log in multiple times and fails miserably each time. It happens, everybody forgets their password. I don't care if you have the best memory in the world, you're going to eventually get locked out at least once. I've done it, everybody's done it. So there's that option there to unlock the account, just check mark that, you hit the apply button, which will be highlighted whenever you're allowed to hit it, and that basically just does that. Now you can see I went to member of, and this will list every membership that they are a part of. So let's just say that they're a part of 4 or 5 groups. They would all be there. So you can easily see, add, and remove anybody from there. And that is the very basic rundown of Active Directory. Is there any outstanding questions? All right. So this presentation is available for public. Whenever I made this account, I made sure that anybody can access it. I also put my demonstration there on YouTube, so anybody can access it. and these are my citations. This is where I got all the information. So if you ever want to get a refresher on what this does or where I got this information from, these 3 links will give you everything that you need. In particular, the Understanding Active Directory Introduction to Active Directory was done by Microsoft itself. It's way more in depth than what I went into, and it is a great kicking off point for anybody. Anything else? All right, I think we're done.
Thanks, John.